Heather, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for coming today. I'm so excited. Heather has already informed me that she's never listened to it. She's going to have to listen to her own episode.
Oh boy.
She's the best way to do it. So, Heather, as you know, as behavioral scientists, we generally focus on population level things, what's true for everybody. But the individual stories of people are tremendously valuable in helping people understand what options are available to them and the twists and turns that people go through. And so, Heather, this is your life. We're going to walk through the whole thing and we're going to have fun and it's going to be great.
Let's do it.
All right. So we always start in the same place, which I want to know. Talk to me about like 7-year-old, 8-year-old Heather. Like, what did she think she was going to be when she grew up? And what did she think was awesome in the world? Like, tell me about young Heather.
All right, so this was mid 1980s. So let's just make sure the context is correct here. And so I was very interested in becoming either a veterinarian, because I had just read all the books, All Things Wild and Wonderful, and great.
James Harriet, baby.
James Harriet, right? And I was like, I am going to be a veterinarian. My mom wouldn't let me have pets. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to devote my life to pets. So that didn't end up working out. So in high school, I was very interested in becoming a physician. So both my stepdad and my mom at the time worked at the hospital. I got a job at the hospital doing EKGs at night, worked my way through college doing that. And so I thought, oh, for sure, I'm going to be some sort of physician. Yeah.
Medical physician kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of place.
I mean, what's greater than healing someone?
100% feels powerful.
Right.
Feels
it's a beautiful, beautiful profession. Yeah.
It's also a profession that, like, if you say it to an adult, they're like, yeah, good doctor. That's a
Oh, my grandmother was thrilled.
Yeah. It's an acceptable profession. All right.
Yes, it's acceptable.
Did you in high school gravitate towards the classes that backed that up? Did you like the sort of biochemistry, physics stuff?
100%. Yep. Took all those AP classes, also did it in college. What kind of stopped that career track dead in its tracks was I took honors organic chemistry at Baylor, which is where I got a full ride at Baylor. So I went to Baylor, and instead of Rice, I probably should, in hindsight, I think I should have gone to Rice and I would have been more in a sciencey track. But when I hit organic chemistry, it just didn't click in my brain. And I thought, I'm not sure if I want to spend the next 6 years of my life, plus all the time it takes to become a physician, doing these types of things. I feel like I have more to offer than just kind of this analytical side of my brain.
And were you very vertically focused in college, where you were sort of like, I'm on this pre-med track and I'm just doing the pre-med things? Or were you experimenting elsewhere and there were sort of other promoting pressures that were saying like, hey,
I had a dual major. I was also an English major, and I just knew that I couldn't get a job with an English degree. So, I've always enjoyed reading. I'm very curious. I went to state UIL and an academic in the writing portion of English, and also did a lot of comparative literature analysis. So kind of love that. My kids hate it now because I take every movie and overanalyze it to death. And I was like, actually, this is interesting, right? Don't you want to know the underlying structure of this story and why it's powerful to you? But no.
Okay. But was the transition out of pre-med like hitting a brick wall, or were you really becoming clear?
It was.
No,
there wasn't any plan after what do I do after pre-med. And so I had a mentor at the time who said, just get a skill. I was like, okay, what skill am I going to get? I mean, it's great advice. So I kind of defaulted to education. So I spent my last year at Baylor getting an education kind of certificate type thing. And I graduated and thought, okay, I'll go into teaching.
What made education the fallback from medicine?
I think it's just the love of learning. A lot of us in this profession are academically kind of gifted. So I've spent my life in schools. I love the structure of learning. I'm always very curious. So I thought, okay, I'll imbue that curiosity and that knowledge and that way to integrate the world to other people. And so that seemed like kind of a natural fallback.
And had you taken any psych classes? Was there any like,
Oh,
no, this is not even in your
yeah. The
repertoire
first
yet.
psych class I took was in my master's at UT.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah,
But
30 years later.
we're not gonna skip ahead to that though. We're not ready. We're not ready. So
Okay.
then you graduate in college having like gone, okay, like it's not gonna be pre-med. I get this English biology degree, I get a teaching certification, and you think you're gonna
Right.
go become a teacher. But
Right.
that is not the path that you ended up on. But
No, it's not. No, no. I went around the world teaching English as a second language because I had only grown up in Texas and I thought, oh, the world's a bigger place. Let me go explore it. So I did some second language courses in Uzbekistan and Tashkent, which is Eastern Russia, right on top of Mongolia. And then realized, okay, I need to go actually get a job and pay my bills now. So I came back to the US and became a director of education at Sylvan Learning Centers, which was a place where kids could go and we assess their skill gaps. We put together a customized program and then we helped them kind of get back on grade level. And so that was my first exposure to more of a scientific method when it came to education, and my first exposure to owning a small business that could really make money. My grandparents had owned a plumbing company, and I had grown up doing their accounting and inventory control. And so this is the first time I'd seen it kind of more on a retail level and helping kids learn. And so I love that. I spent several years at Sylvan.
we you do enough of these, and I don't know what episode we're on, but we're on the episode a lot. And so as much as we like the individual story, some themes do come about, and early exposure to entrepreneurship
Yes,
does seem to be sort of a predictor of applied behavioral science.
I agree.
Not surprisingly, because it's a sort of nascent field, and so you have to be a little bit entrepreneurial and a little bit sort of like risk takey to try this thing that's sort of wonky. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so it's fascinating you had that
You
experience.
100% have to be a risk taker and want to push the envelope because this field is not defined. You must define it yourself. And so, as an entrepreneur, you're always looking for what are the needs? How can I fill the needs? And you have usually 52 different jobs during the day, and that's pretty much what you do as a applied behavioral scientist as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I taught at Sylvan. I wanted to become the president of that company. It was growing. I opened up new locations. But the owner at that time, Carl, said, hey, I don't want a woman in charge of this company. I'd rather have Gordon lead it instead. And so I thought, okay, not the place for me. I'm not going to be able to take over and purchase this from Carl. So I thought, okay, what do I do instead? And my friend at the time was a business broker. And he said, hey, come work with me. And I said, oh, okay. So it was kind of like a braille journey here. I was just like, whatever the next opportunity was, I was like, that sounds interesting, right? How to help people buy and sell businesses. So I did that for a year and got fired from that job.
Um,
This is my first like tears. I'm fired. I don't have success in a particular profession.
tell me about that process, because everybody gets fired at least once in their career. If you didn't get fired, you're not
If
doing it
you're
right.
not trying, you're not getting fired.
Right.
Anyway, so I got fired because there's a certain way that you calculate the value of a company. It's called EBITDA, earnings before income and taxes. And you have to add those things back in, and then you try to tell the potential business owner, hey, this is what we think you can make in a year, right? So the person at the time who was running this very small brokerage, I felt was not doing the EBITDA calculations correctly. Because she was adding much more into an EBITDA calculation that was necessary and trying to boost that bottom line number. And I was like, that's not how it goes. So she and I had,
This is gap accounting. There are
that's right.
generally
She and I had a
accepted principles.
disagreement about truth in advertising at that point. So I was in tears. I called my husband at the time and he said, let's just buy a business. So one of the businesses I was trying to sell, I actually purchased with a $50,000 loan from my grandparents, the ones who ran that plumbing company. And I turned that business from one that was making about $50,000 a year to about $250,000 a year. And I thought, damn, I'm good at business.
And wait, what was the business? You got like,
The business was think of a UPS store, but for the United States Postal Service. So they have these small little substations. They can contract them out to individuals like myself. And as long as I follow all the post office rules, I basically had a mini post office. And I had several of those over the years, renegotiated the contract with the Postal Service, and really grew that company. And I thought, oh, I'm so good at this.
But also not the continuing journey. You're not still managing
Well, I got it to a 4-hour work week, and this was before Tim Ferriss wrote his book, right? So I was like, okay, I'm working 4 hours a week. I was getting kind of bored. My husband at the time was like, hey, wait, I'm an attorney. I'm working 100 hours a week, and you're making more than I am. This doesn't work for our marriage. And I was like, okay, well, what do you want me to do? Sell the postal contracts. So I was like, no, I don't think so. I think I have a good thing going here. So it took a couple years to convince me, but then I finally sold them. So, 20x what I paid. And so I was like, oh, this is business flipping. Let's go do this. Like, I can make some money doing this. So bought another company, a larger one, and continue flipping those companies until I had two fairly large, around $10 million a year annual revenue businesses. And they were in the club car racing industry. And the reason I bought them in the club car racing industry, one was a retail services and one was a manufacturing. So I manufactured the gears that you would put in a McLaren or an F-150, a Formula Ford, and race around the track at 300 miles an hour. And my clients were people like CEOs and, famous comedians who own 50 cars and run them around these tracks in California. So the reason I bought that company is because it had year-over-year growth for 30 years. I thought, okay.
Do you have any interest in race cars?
No, not really. It just met my 14-point criteria.
This is how behavioral scientists run, this is how scientists buys a business. I don't care what it does.
Yeah.
The math
you have to
works.
have a rubric. You have to have a criteria. And if it meets all those criteria, and you can afford it, go for it, folks. Well, what I didn't know, and that was 2008. What I didn't realize in 2008 was I had bought and vertically integrated two companies in the same niche. And this is where, you don't know what you don't know. Don't double down. And this is where Danny Kahneman was pretty clear. We tend to double down, right? So I doubled down in a niche business in 2008, and that was the very beginning of the global collapse.
Yeah. Right off a cliff. If you were serving CEOs, all of a sudden, that's not a great market.
Yeah, all the CEOs went back to work. They didn't have time to run their little old race cars around the track. And so all my clients evaporated. In fact, that whole niche pretty much collapsed. Yeah. So I tell people of this time in my life, which I call my entrepreneurial career, this is the time where I made millions and lost millions. And all my personal net worth were in those two businesses. And I closed one and I sold one off to a friend down in who was a manufacturing guy. So because I had a 10,000 square foot warehouse full of huge gear manufacturing equipment, very few people can buy those. But I had a friend who also manufactured. So precision manufacturing sold off. The retail business was also kind of divided and sold off. And I ended up owning about $2 million to the SBA. So that was a dark night of the soul. Around that time.
And then you decided to go into behavioral science, the least profitable thing on earth.
There was one more iteration.
Well done, you. Okay,
yeah, I know.
There's a step in between.
Yeah, I didn't know what to do at that time. And so I was on a plane to Chicago reading this book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And I was like, oh my God, this man is kind of diagnosing every shitty decision I have ever made in business. Like, I thought I was so great in business. And then looking back, I realized I had made just cognitive error after cognitive error. And I was like, there's a manual for this. These psychologists know this. And it was beautiful to see economics and psychology coming together in this glorious kind of explanatory, it just explained everything. And I was like, okay, I've got to go do this. And so I basically went to UT, had a professor there, Art Markman. He was starting a new program. It was a program that was very similar to behavioral science. It was focused more on organizational design.
Mhm.
So he let me pick and choose my classes. I went to the business school. I went to psychology. I pick and choose a bunch of classes that I thought, okay, this is going to give me more information on. Go
And
ahead.
and what did you think that, so you're learning it. What did you
Yeah.
think you were going to do with it? Like, I'm going to come out of, this human dimensions of organizations and behavioral economics program and sort of like, I'm going to come out of UT Austin and then open another business? Like,
I had no idea. I thought, okay, I'm going to go into the corporate world, right? So during that time, I start a startup, I get divorced, I run my own recruiting company. I'm just kind of doing whatever I can to make a buck and keep myself afloat, right? And I thought, okay, with all this great knowledge, I got to go out and change the world. I got to tell everybody else how to not make shitty decisions, right? So, I don't want people to make the same mistakes I did. So, try to get a job as an ex-CEO with a weird degree
yeah.
in a small market, which is Austin, right? It was terrible. It took me about 18 months to get a job. And what the person who finally gave me a job was a co-investor, a lady, a friend of mine who she and I had co-invested in some businesses. She's like, Heather, come work for me. So she ran the Center for Generational Kinetics, which is a place where we studied Gen Z behavior and millennial behavior and helped large companies adapt their marketing and communication strategies to Gen Z and millennials. And this is back in 2018. So millennials and Gen Z was kind of a new thing for companies. And so every CEO was like, why do I not have the next generation of consumer? And so I started, applying everything I knew to about behavioral science to market research, which, by the way, still needs a transformation. Market research in the iteration that it is right now was completely was a complete travesty. It is not predictive. It cannot tell you anything about what that person who answered that survey is going to do. And so my friend understood, oh, maybe I can get more prediction out of my research. So she brought me on board. And so I did that for several years.
And that was this your first kind of agency experience?
Yeah, it was my first really job where I wasn't signing my own checks.
What was that like? That's a difficult and
It
interesting.
was very hard. It was very difficult, and I really give kudos to Jason and Denise who hired me, because they knew I was in a tough time, with the divorce and with this weird degree that we thought we could leverage, and we did leverage it very, very successfully. So we got big clients like Apple and just huge contracts coming into the door, because when I talk about behavioral science, everyone's ears perked up and like, oh, you can tell me what people are going to do. You can do some ethnography, observation. There are certain frameworks you can use that predict behavior. All this stuff was very new in the field of market research, and still is, frankly.
Mhm. And were you
Yeah.
doing a lot? Was it 50-50 sort of selling that in and helping clients understand, and 50% servicing? Was it all on the back end? Like, how did that
It
thing
was
end up
about
breaking out?
25% getting customers in the door, about 25% sharing out the results of either the ethnographic research or the surveys, because we kept on doing surveys. They're easy, people know how to buy them, they're fairly cheap.
Right.
But you can change the survey questions a little bit. And so I did a lot of, talking to boards about a little strategy there. So doing the research, selling the research, and then also trying to be a strategy director, telling the company, okay, this is what you need to do. And today, I think one of the places you can get the most traction with behavioral science is in an insights type role, with several caveats. The first caveat, which I learned in this job, is corporations, CEOs, boards are not buying insights. They don't want an insight. What they want is an action. They want to know what to do with it. And that's where a behavioral scientist becomes very valuable to an insights team, is that we can say, okay, here are the insight, but let's rank these insights in order of power of effect, right? you know, and then which one of these does the company actually have the resources and the ability to go execute against, and then how should they do that execution. So that's something that's new for insights leaders. They're usually just giving the information to their business partners, but their business partners need to know what to do with it, and they need to really cull down a 200-page deck with, you know, hundreds and hundreds of graphs down to one executive summary. And so I told my team, I was like, we are not giving 100-page, you know, research documents to our clients. We're going to do an executive summary, and then we're going to create thought leadership off the back of that. And that's what people ended up really, really responding to. And that is how you actually change people, is giving them an easy thing to do.
So some of this, it's very clear as your behavioral science background, but some of this is also just, hey, I've been an executive. I've been on the other end of buying things. I've been on
Yes,
the other end of
exactly.
selling things.
Yes.
You got a business acumen that, you know, unfortunately for a lot of behavioral scientists, you know, that business stuff is hard to access, right?
It really is, because as an academic, you're trying to create knowledge. As a business person, you're trying to exploit knowledge, right? So it's that whole, you know, exploration versus exploitation. And so I think with psychology and, you know, applying psychology to business problems, it's very similar to, you know, technology commercialization in universities, where you're trying to pull those insights, the technology you're developing, pulling it into the business world. The same with behavioral science. And we've definitely had our ups and downs trying to do that. And there hasn't been a lot of structure around that. And the more structure we can put, getting those university insights out into the business world, the better. But it does not exist.
Did you like agency life? Did you find, you know, going from someplace where I'm gonna call it vertically focused, right? Down
Right,
into
right.
business, I'm looking at growing this business and nothing
Yep.
else, to like hey, it's sort of a horizontal. I make recommendations. I can't force you to take them, and I have to sort of work, you know, and then I have to move on to the
For
next
me, it was
client.
the first time, and I love giving my opinion to people. So I loved it, right? Everyone's asking for my opinion. I look at a website, I say, change this, this, and this. I look at the Four Seasons came to us and said, why aren't millennials booking our hotel rooms? And I said, because of this, this, and this, go change this, this, and this. So it was the first time where I could just be, you know, let all my ideas and all that experience running businesses just fly off the shelf.
Mhm.
And I loved it. I thought it was great. Now, do I miss building things? 100%. That is one thing where the nuts and bolts of applying behavioral science is much better suited towards building something, a product, a service, a team, a company, you know, whatever. 100%, you're going to learn more building something. It is very fun though, doing the research, applying all the behavioral, you know, frameworks, everyone going, oh my God, that's amazing. And then telling them the one thing they can do to change, you know, the game. So I love both.
And but then you end up, you know, at some point you decide to go into Dell. What was that transition like? You know, what drove that sort of like, hey, I want to go internally focused to a company kind of decision, given that you
So
were loving the agency life?
interestingly, I just finished up a big project with the San Antonio Spurs, and it was about why is Gen Z not buying our season tickets? And as a part of that particular investigation, it was very much a customer journey focused investigation. So I really love the journey work, right? Because systems, you cannot be a good behavioral scientist without understanding the system in which something is happening, the systems of systems. And so that's what customer journey work is understanding how the customer is interacting with the system your company has created for their flow through your company, right? And so you start seeing, okay, silos create gaps create breaks in customer journeys. Now you start having a blueprint of helping every company out there trying to make a better experience for the customer. And this was around 2020, where it was like, okay, customer journey work and experience design had really started to come to the forefront. The D school at Stanford, I'd gone to Stanford, so I had some buddies and friends out there. So that became a place where I thought, okay, I've applied behavioral science to market research. Now let's go do it to customer journeys.
I love that.
And so I walked in the door as a journey researcher, and it was the services department, right? And that was about a third of Dell's revenue, which makes a lot of sense. So, behavioral scientists, applied behavioral scientists, if you are working in a place where you're in the use cycle, the use part of the product cycle, it can be extremely powerful. And so, what happened there that really kind of supercharged my career growth was the pandemic. So the pandemic happened, and what happened? People pulled out their old computers from the bottom of their closets and started trying to work on them, right? Because no one had an at-home office at that point. And so they were like, oh, this computer is 4 years old. I can certainly make it work. Where did they go? If they had a Dell system, they went to the Dell Services website. Who was the Dell Services website designed for at that point? It was designed for IT professionals. So we had a real big mismatch between how the website was designed and the new use cases that were coming up to use the website. What that was causing was a business problem for the services teams, because these people started calling the service departments and going, hey, I can't get my computer to work. What's wrong? Dell Technology, fix it for me. Guess what? These people were out of service warranty. And so we had a terrible customer service experience, right? And so I saw an opportunity to pitch to my boss, my skip boss, and finally the president of services, an integrated design team. And I said, hey, I can, in 2 weeks, change your website and decrease the number of people calling that are not within their service plans. Right now, it is so poorly designed for a retail customer that you're having millions and millions of people call that shouldn't be calling. And let me go change that for you. And so I pitched an integrated design team. We had three or four awesome designers. I had 4 experienced researchers. I had 20 developers in India, and a couple data scientists that were loaned to me from the data science teams. And we started turning and burning changes to the website to help people fix their own computers or know who to call when.
And that's, you got an opportunity that many behavioral scientists don't get, which is you got to run the thing, right? The ability to make the decisions, the
Yes.
hobgoblin for a lot of people, and whether it's in consumer research or sort of, market research, or whether it's, within a company, you can't really make the decision. You can make the recommendations, but you can't make the decisions. So
That's
being in
right.
a decision-making capacity like that, is such a great, great place to be.
Yeah, it was fabulous. And so that team actually eventually grew to about 30 people.
Wow. And you were
Yeah.
there for 2-ish years. So you got a nice, good, long run at,
Yeah,
making this happen.
100%. We worked on chat bots. We worked on all kinds of things to help people fix their own computers. We started WhatsApp, kind of a WhatsApp chat bot. So, and that was a new thing, but I saw kind of I did global research, right? So I was really able to see how people in China are working with the website differently than people in Brazil, differently than Europe. At that point, I started getting to CSAT scores because one of the KPIs there were like, do customers like their experience, right? So we started learning about the different ways CSAT is measured. How should we measure it better? So there was kind of a whole overlay on just changing the website for 340 million people. I learned really interesting things like Cyrillic is very long. So if you change some wording on a web page, you can completely break the Russia experience, right? Or just the fact that Chinese is read differently, right? So those web pages are completely need to be designed differently. So there was a lot of amazing learnings there, and I would go back and do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I was having a conversation. I was just came back from Chicago, and I was walking with another behavioral scientist, Jonathan Stahl, who's at Nationwide, and we were talking about how people misunderstand complexity, right? So at large companies, people think, oh yeah, you'll get an economy of scale, right? Like,
Right.
yeah, I write a service article in English and then I just press a magic translate button and it translates it into a bunch of languages. And so it's like actually easier to do things at scale. But in reality, it's the opposite, right? Like, every time you get this weird matrix of like 82 different characteristics that are all interwoven with each other. So you actually end
That's
up
right.
slowing down,
That's right.
right? And so, you know, people always want Microsoft and places to move faster. And I'm like, you really don't, right? You want them to move incredibly slowly and deliberately because everything they do has this ripple effect through everything else. So you want them to be very deliberate and cautious and sort of.
100%. In fact, I think if the move fast, break things, remember that was the mantra of big tech was move fast and break things. Like you don't want to break things, especially important things that cost you money.
Right. Well, and
So,
and in Dell's case, and particularly in support's case, that people rely on, right? Like
yeah. Yeah.
with the pandemic, I need this 4-year-old lap. We
That's
don't,
right.
the
That's right.
manufacturing supply chain is fucked. We can't get
Yep.
things from China.
Yep.
Like, I can't just automatically replace a bunch of laptops because, by the way, the kids need them and everybody else needs them
Right.
too.
Right.
I need this 4-year-old laptop to work. Like, we got to
That's
make this
right.
happen here.
That's right. I also got to do a lot of B2B research for IT professionals. And so I loved that as well because these are people, this is their job. So how can we make their job easier? And I love making people's jobs easier. So I got a really good kind of view into what we needed to do for those people. And we were able to start building a website specifically for those IT professionals and integrating a lot of different pieces of the website into one kind of overall easy to access portal. And that was a real issue in collaboration. Everybody wants to collaborate. Collaboration is costly, it's time consuming, and it is very, very difficult. So learned a lot about collaboration as well.
I feel like there's a bizarro world where you ended up being, where the org psych stuff sort of,
Yes, exactly. It
won
all
out.
came together because it turns out that to actually drive change, you have to, in an organization, you have to change the organization.
Yeah. Yeah, internal BeSci.
Right.
I have a very interesting opportunity actually next month where I am going to give a talk in China at a place that I gave a talk 10 years ago. And so they're
Oh,
doing an anniversary conference where they're bringing back like speakers from the past 10 years to sort of give an updated talk about their topic. And so I've been thinking a lot about internal BeSci and all of the
yes.
things that go into just trying to make the executional part of a company is very, very difficult. Anytime you get humans together, it's very, very difficult. And so I absolutely can hear you that, collaboration, particular multi-stakeholder collaboration is
Oh,
just
yeah. Yeah.
brutal,
So
brutal.
that was kind of my first eye-opening experience that the larger companies get. That's why we think they get dumber. It's because the coordination is so much effort, and that it has to go through so many minds. It has to go through so many levels. So you've got like the collaboration horizontally, but then you have the decision making vertically, and so you've got two directions you're always having to manage, right?
Yes, it is
Managing up and then managing your peers, managing up and managing your peers. And so this is where the whole idea of persuasion started to really take root in my mind, that behavioral science is it's a methodology, it's a body of knowledge, it's a practical kind of tool, but it is also something you have to persuade people about. And I was like, okay, I need to understand persuasion.
and you're
So
doing a
that was,
lot of that these days. You are at the
oh
right
my
place
God,
to be
yes.
to be doing it. How,
So that's
how did you end up at Ogilvy? Like, how did the conversation start? Why was it
mhm,
interesting to you? Why was it interesting to them? I mean, this is a return to
mhm.
the agency world for you.
Yep, yep. So Ogilvy is interesting because it had a very famous behavioral science team in the UK. I had started to follow Nudge Stock, which is their kind of yearly behavioral science, very fun, very cool conference, right? And so I'd followed Nudge Talk for many years and I'd wanted to go. And during the pandemic, they put it online for free. And so then I was able to see, okay, this is the type of work they're actually doing. So there was a lot of great social change work that was going on. There was a lot of cool kind of nudges from the marketing world. And I thought, okay, The scale, I love the scale of this. Let's go try to figure out how to communicate and see if we can change behavior at scale through these methods, right? Because generally we had been changing behavior through forms, right? Like little gateways on forms. What if we could actually change behavior at the top of the funnel?
Mm-hmm. And
Could we?
thus, and
Could we? Could we change behavior at the top of the funnel?
tell me
Could
about,
we cross the intention action gap? Could we do that with just words and images?
tell me about coming to a place where behavioral science was already an accepted discipline, because that's very different. I mean,
Yeah,
most of the time, to your point, you're convincing people that this is a methodology they should apply.
that's
To
right.
your point, there's a group of people that, there's a very famous practice in the UK. There are very famous people associated with it, like it's a known quantity. What was it
Yep.
like to come into an organization that already had an idea of what behavioral science was to them and for them?
It was fabulous. In fact, I probably wouldn't have gone without that just because starting a team, a behavioral science team, is hard enough. But in the agency world, you have to go get projects to basically pay for your team.
Right.
So I had to pay for myself, my own salary. And then to build the team, I had to go sell enough projects internally and externally to clients so that I could afford a team. And so having the UK team, with, they had about 12 people. Rory was always talking, Rory Sutherland. Sam Tatum hired me, was also had written a book. And so there was a lot of amazing kind of momentum that was going on in the company at the time. And so they actually, I had applied to be on a different team to try to get my foot in the door to go work for the UK team. But they said, no, Heather, you don't have enough statistics. So I was like, okay, fine. And then a year later, the recruiter called me back and said, hey, we want to start up a North America version of the UK BeSci team. Would you be willing to do it? And I was like, hell yeah, I'm there. I think must be my dream job. And so I walked in the door and started to try to build a North America team and collaborating a lot with the UK team.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about, it is an interesting place to be. You've
Yeah.
got this legacy support, but you really got
Yep.
to go, try to sell people in and make a brand for something.
That's
In
right.
a time where you're also facing increasing competition, right?
Oh,
DIT
yeah.
is moving over to the United States. Irrational Labs is
That's
growing.
right.
Like
That's
it's
right.
too is sort of, so it's a competitive market. Talk
It
to me.
is.
Let's start with the sort of like building a team in a competitive market and sort of finding your niche, because there is a little bit of coopetition between all of the various, we're all friendly.
Yep.
Um, BeSci.io has the advantage of, we only do one thing, right? We only do the team building. We don't do any project. We refer everything
Right.
else
Right.
out,
Right.
right? So we're a little like the Switzerland of behavioral science, but there is competition for contracts and things,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. How did you feel stepping into that?
Well, I didn't have a lot of competition with behavioral science teams because very few of them are working in advertising. So what would happen when I would get a project like a big company like Verizon per se, for example, there was already a team of 80 people in the agency working on Verizon.
Mm,
If they hit a road bump, they would come to me and say, hey, not enough people are buying my plan. Not enough people, they're not adding on enough stuff. Or we need to get first responders to buy this particular product. Or we have this CSR program for small business owners. We're trying to upskill them so they can be more successful. They're not finishing the courses on our portal. So then I was like, okay, here's what we can do. We can do this, this, and this. And, all the BeSci frameworks and the BeSci principles and, however I thought those teams could apply them. And then they would have to, in turn, give me a portion of their scope.
right.
Now, that's where it got pretty tricky because to use me and to really help the client, they would have to give up a portion of their scope. And if you've ever been in the agency world, no one wants to give money to anyone else because they're trying to keep their jobs. So I had to be doubly persuasive in telling them that, hey, if you use me, you will see a huge uplift in this KPI and it will be worth the $80,000 that you have to transfer to my team from your team.
And talk to me a little bit about that. How did you, so start with even before convincing is awareness, right? We have to make people aware that there is
Yeah.
this new behavioral science capability. How did you
Right.
go about building internal awareness of the fact that you even could be someone that they would go to for these types of questions?
So several different ways. The way that Ogilvy works, and maybe many agencies, is you have one person who's responsible for the client relationship.
Mhm.
And so that's called the account lead. And there's often a global account lead. So those are called GCLs, global account leads, global client leads. And so basically, those people meet every month. So you have to get on that meeting, pitch your 10-page deck, and then hope they call you when they hit a roadblock. So lots of meetings with global account leads, lots of meetings with local account leads in New York. I was remote, so that was even a bigger kind of hurdle for me. If I had been in the office a lot more, I think I probably could have built the team a little faster. But that was the main avenue. There were people who would call the consulting practice, and a consulting lead would think, hey, we need behavioral science on this. So, for example, all the FEMA work that we did in resilience behaviors was done through another office who was like, hey, I don't think we can change resilience behaviors without behavioral science. Let's hire part of Heather's team to come help us. So either someone would realize that the challenge was too large for just marketing communications to impact it, or I was able to kind of come in at the last moment on my BeSci horse and, try to save the day.
I like the idea of you on the B-side horse. This feels
That's
very,
right.
we're coming full circle, right? It
That's
all
right.
starts with James Herriot as a veterinarian.
That's right.
Like, I still am a veterinarian for the horse known as B-side.
That's right.
What was unexpectedly challenging about coming to Ogilvy? What was a challenge that you didn't expect when you came into the environment?
I didn't expect how difficult it would be to apply behavioral science to the top of the marketing funnel. So, and how difficult it would be to be a differentiator in these big pitches. So, so a lot of the way I would get my work is help out on a big pitch, like the Verizon pitch, like the Audi pitch, bring in some behavioral science principles, bring in some research, try to kind of explain the strategy from a behavioral standpoint, like how to get more people to buy cars, how to get more people in the door, right? That was pretty challenging because that pitch team is 50 people.
Right.
And so you're one voice among 50. And so to actually be differentiating, they have to take your idea and actually give you a couple slides, right? So you can present it to the client. And so you would work really hard, and then those slides would get like kind of washed out for a larger narrative change, right? Yeah. So that part was pretty intense, working kind of in that big pitch environment. It was fun, but it was intense, and I kept on getting cut. And I was like, why are you cutting me from the team?
Don't you understand how important it is?
Or they would be like, can you take this strategy and BeSci it? Can you like take some pixie dust and get some principles and throw it in there and give us, the client, a rationale for the strategy that, oh, by the way, we've come up with? And you'd be like, okay, this strategy is shit.
This is backwards, folks. It's evidence, then conclusion.
Yes, this is ass backwards. But you try to work with your stakeholders as best you can. So there was a lot of compromise going on. There was a lot of me trying to work within a system that is not built for research or science or anything close to it, right?
Mm-hmm. What was unexpectedly sort of joyous or fun about it that you hadn't really expected was going to be sort of novel and interesting? I know I asked the hard questions, man.
Oh, no. It's a great question. Unexpected was I had never worked in a creative agency, and I consider myself a creative person. So the creativity was joyous to be around, right? Like the amount, I think I can come through with like an idea per second. when you're in a room with full of people, it's just like a maelstrom of creativity, and it is brilliant and beautiful. And you think, oh my God, this is the most exciting place to be. And so it really was an exciting place to be, and just all the potential and opportunities that were just coming out of people's brains. And it really had nothing to do with science or behavioral science. It was just kind of seeing people, their giftings coming out and just being brilliant, right? Just throwing a bunch of gifted people into a room together and say, okay, come up with something great. That was just really interesting to behold from like a research point of view. Like a lot of people study creativity, and it's still very squishy how it happens. So I loved just observing.
I love
So
that.
that part was unexpected. I did not realize how much I would get a seat at the creative table, and how much I could influence the end result, and how much I could just become friends with kind of creatives and how they think. And they wanted to know more about behavioral science, and I wanted to know more about their process. So that part was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that there is a little bit of a misnomer about you know scientists in general not being all that creative, and you're sort of like, no, science is incredibly creative. Like you have to.
Very creative. Because listen, we've got thousands of principles to choose from. Which one are we going to apply to this particular situation? After a while, and after a lot of different applications, you start learning which ones are the like go-tos, right? Like I have 10 go-to principles I will always pull out of the bag if I need to change KPIs in a CRM campaign, right? And then everyone's like, oh my God, the behavioral principle works 67% of the time and outperform the control. That's because I've been doing this for 10 years and I know which principles to pull, right? If you just looked at all those principles, not you, but if just the normal person who's learned about loss aversion or social proof, yes, you may be successful, but there are a lot more principles you need to know which ones are going to work in a particular context, or at least have a hypothesis that these are the ones that will work in this context.
And the
So,
nice thing about science is, we always test. So, we
yeah,
have the ability, there is the learning rate for science, the ability to create in the lack of a better word, like the design sense of behavioral science goes
mm-hmm.
faster, I think, for behavioral scientists because we test everything, right?
That's
Whereas if
right.
you're just doing rando taste making, then you don't really get the chance to understand how successful or not. Success becomes weirdly tautological. You're like, it's cool because I said it was cool and the market received it as cool and therefore it's cool. It's like a weirdly tautological version of what taste making is.
Yeah, A/B testing can be just such a dead end, and companies spend millions and millions of dollars A/B testing. I'm like, you're A/B testing the wrong things. Like, when I was helping Samsung with the CRM campaign, they were testing different colors of the buttons, right? They were testing different font sizes. They were testing what time of day people opened up emails. I'm like, you need to be talking to people's motivations. You need to understand why someone would buy a $5,000 72-inch TV. What's happening in their lives? Can you actually resonate with what's happening in their lives? Can you use behavioral science principles to change that copy, to tell a story, to evoke an emotion, right? Like, and then it was like, oh, so the lights kind of went on for the teams.
Yeah, I mean, behavioral science, when you use this sort of Matt Waller, like behavioral model, business model, behavior model, operational model. Sometimes one of the questions I get is sort of like, well, but we make decisions over here in the operational model, and we make choices and design choices all the time. I'm like, yes, but you make choices about the color of the button, right? Like you're like,
Right, right,
this is about how to build it well. This is what to build at all, right? And
right.
when you start, those are really different methodologies. It's very hard to A/B test your way to success when
I
you're talking about
agree. I
big,
think I
big
think you
swings.
can A/B test your way to maybe hitting your benchmarks.
Yeah,
Maybe.
like I can get 2%, but and look,
Yeah.
I don't want to disparage that. That's if you're operating at the $1 billion level, 2% of $1 billion turns out to be a lot of money, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
But
but
that's
what
not
if
really
you can
behavioral
have
science.
30%? Like we changed click-through rates by 500%. Why? Because no one was clicking through.
Yeah,
Right? Why? Because there was no reason to click through. Give them a good reason to click through, folks.
yeah. Nibbling at the 2 and 3% in behavioral science, just because it is an effortful process. There's
Yeah,
a,
it
you know,
is.
booking.com is sort of the prototypical version of this. They don't really do behavioral science. They just run everything. They're like,
What
everything
a
that,
waste. To me, that's a waste of resources. Be smart as what you're trying to do.
yeah, they're very different approaches for sure. Uh, Imagine you weren't at Ogilvy. Like there were lots of branches along here. You could have gone different directions, right? There's
Mhm.
versions where, you know, the market doesn't fall out and, now you're the CEO of a massive racing conglomerate. Uh,
Right.
who knows? Um,
I'd be retired by now, I think.
you like it too much. I don't know.
I do. I love making an impact. I think being a behavioral scientist, you have to be mission driven. You have to want to make people's lives better because there are so many ways that the world is trying to take from people. And there's so many ways our brains work against us in our current environment. So you want to be the person who's trying to help find that win-win for people.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's not the easiest road. As you said
No,
several
it is
times
not.
throughout here, you're doing a lot
Yeah.
of convincing, you're doing a lot of selling in. So if you didn't love
Oh,
it,
yeah.
you'd
If
find
you don't love
something.
selling, do not get into behavioral science because you're going to have to sell it all day long. You have to sell the approach, you have to sell the results, you have to sell the action, you have to do it again and again and again. And yeah, it's a lot of selling.
Which is hard, I think, for scientists, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it as a famous sort of anti-marketer, right? Like much of start at the end is sort of anti-marketing. Um, I think the thing that you sort of want to believe as a scientist is that the truth will out, right? Like if I just
right,
amass the evidence
right,
that shows that this is like the logical best course of action, then everybody will
right,
do it. And it's just like not true, right? It just
right,
turns out persuasion matters, and it's not about whether pressure should change somebody's behavior, but rather it does change someone's behavior. There is no should in behavioral
right.
science, right? Because if we just operate on shoulds, we're back to those 2% margins instead of those
That's
20%
right.
margins. Um, what a lovely story you've had. You've had so many twists and turns, and you've got to try
Mm-hmm.
all these different things. Uh, what do you think? I don't ask people prognostications about sort of where behavioral science is going. I don't know either. I don't I think it's a tough thing to ask anybody to do. But if you
Yeah.
think about you, what are you excited about these days?
I, marketing is in a very tenuous position right now. So I think that if you're a behavioral scientist, definitely do not go knocking on a marketing agency's door. So I'm trying to think now where can behavioral science really make an impact on companies today? And I think the two verticals that I'm most interested in pursuing are health and healthcare and preventative health. Had a lot of success with omnichannel journeys at the end there at Ogilvy and integrating with the health teams. So I think health strategy is a place that behavioral scientists can slot in very, very well and make a huge impact on people's lives. Like if we get people to do colon cancer screening earlier, if we get people to do breast cancer screening earlier, if we can get them to drink a glass of water and do, walk around the block, like all these things will be incredibly powerful in changing people's life trajectory. So we've got a lot of great case studies from behavioral science across the board on health behavior change. And so it's one of those ones where it's fun because it's usually habit formation. And I don't think a lot of us practice a lot in habit formation because it's just something that takes a lot of design.
Yeah.
So yeah, so health I'm really interested in. And also financial services. So, decisions about our money are extremely, extremely raw. How do we help people make better decisions, and specifically women? Because I'm a woman founder. I have, gone from everything to nothing to everything to nothing. So I know what it's like and being a single mom and supporting kids and trying to build a career. And so anything I can do to help women build wealth, I want to be a part of. Really, anyone build wealth because the system is not set up for us to build wealth. So why not give people some of the tools and tricks to make their lives better? So those are kind of the two verticals I'm looking at. Um, in terms of where can behavioral science be powerful, I think anything in customer experience, right? anything in product, of course, but there is a lot of customer journey work that I think a behavioral scientist could be very, very helpful in. If you're at the right kind of level in the organization to help make those organization-wide changes that are needed. So I think that's where, behavioral scientists might find themselves in the future. Yeah, not a lot of individual standalone behavioral science teams. I think behavioral science is something that you're going to need to apply in a particular role. Mm-hmm. If you're just starting, if you're just coming into the field, you need to have a specialty in, say, research, but you also need to have the behavioral science so you can do it better.
Yeah, that version of an integrated behavioral science is much more
That's right.
Much more in vogue right now. I think there's room for both, and we do, obviously behavioral science, BeSci builds a lot of the teams in the industry, but I do think that a lot of what we end up doing is just raising generalized awareness. The hard part there is, man, it's a big cultural shift. You go to some big tech company. I can think of a big tech company we did a lot of training for, and then we came back about 6 months later, and it was all kind of dead in the water. And so we started.
Yeah, it's reversion to the mean. Like if you can't change the actual organization, the training does not help.
Yeah. Then what we discovered was a very particular, unsurprising in behavioral science, right? You start looking at things and, we started with behavioral statements, right? And so people would try and write a behavioral statement, and then, I'd like to get together with my manager and we'd write a behavioral statement, and then we'd start moving our way up the levels, to ratify this behavioral statement.
Right.
And about 2 levels above us, the answer would be because our competitors have it.
Right.
We're not trying to change behavior. Our competitors have this feature, so we're going to build this feature.
Right.
Now you're like, cool, I have all of this awesome wisdom about how to change behavior, how to do science in situ, how to make these processes work. And then people are like, I don't know, Heather's got it, so I got to have one too.
Yep. No, I hear you. That's challenging. I think a standalone behavioral science team has to be very, very intentional about upward management. So, and telling their story and showing results. And I know behavioral scientists shaking their boots because they're like, oh, well, this result, like we want to be really, really precise. But I think in an organization, you have to make some assumptions and you have to like extrapolate out like a lifetime customer value or you can't measure everything in an organization. So what can you measure? And then extrapolate out what the value is to the organization as a result. And then that's what gets sent up the chain in one slide. Otherwise, if you don't tell your story, you're kind of, you can be considered extraneous or nice to have instead of have to have. And so when cuts come, people are like, oh, this is an optimizing function. It's a layer on top of our actual, way we function. Let's get rid of all those layers. So you can get swept away, I think, in the current of downsizing or right sizing is what they call it. Or zero, what do they call it? Zero, there's another corporate word for it. But so I think if you're going to have a behavioral science team, you need to be a really great storyteller, and you have to tell your stories up the chain, not down the chain.
Well, Heather, you are a wonderful storyteller, and thank you for telling me your story today.
Sure, thank you.
And sharing it, because again, I do think, the twists and turns matter. And, I think it's very easy to look at, especially in a field like behavioral science where we're struggling for success and making, people want to sort of present the successes that we've made. It's, we got to talk about this village. We got to talk about this place.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me and spending some time with me today. I appreciate you. I'll see you on down the road. I haven't got down your way in a while, but it's on me to come down and hang out with you.
Come down. We've got great margaritas here in Austin.
Yeah. The last time I was there was an ice storm, so I need to come back and reset the slate.
We met in Austin when you came down South by Southwest. So
yes, and somebody asked me to moderate a panel this year, so I may be down.
Okay,
not too distant future, so we'll make it happen. We're also talking about a San Diego hangout. That's somebody was complaining that there's no conference, and I'm like, I don't have the energy to have a conference, But like Steph Habifin, we got a
Oh,
bunch of
here in
people
the
in
US, because Europe, the BIT has one in Europe all the time.
Yeah,
So
there were conferences over there, but in the
yeah,
US, people are like, they're like, "Where's the US conference?" I'm like, "We're not going to do a conference. We're going to do a hangout." San
I
Diego
love
is a
that.
place you would want to come for vacation anyway. So let's just
That's
pick a
right.
week, bring your
Yeah,
kids. Like, we'll all hang out in San Diego. It'll be
I'm
behavioral
there.
science surfing.
Yeah,
You
you set
know,
the date. I'm coming.
yeah, we can all get tacos. So stay tuned for the
Okay,
great behavioral science hangout
that's right. All
in
right, I love
San
it.
Diego.
The unconference.
The unconference. That's right.
Sounds
More
good.
surfing, less science.
Oh, all
All right.
right.
Good to see you, Heather.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate it.